1941, Japan was stalemated in its war with China. To break it and achieve victory, Tokyo decided to seize the Dutch East Indies, with its vital raw materials, in particular oil. However, the Japanese leadership believed that such an act of aggression would provoke Britain and the United States. Therefore, Japan intended to capture their territories before either could organize a military response. One of them was the Philippines, a U.S. Commonwealth. The Japanese began with the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, a stunning piece of military planning, but was a failure at all but the tactical level, since Admiral Yamamoto's mission was to sink all three American carriers, Saratoga, Lexington, and Enterprise, that were out to sea that day. The Japanese Navy continued unbridled success supporting Japanese forces. They took, among others, Wake Island, the Marshalls, Caroline and Solomon Islands, and the Philippines. General Douglas MacArthur was retired then, serving as a field marshal in the Filipino military until President Roosevelt called him back to active duty in order to mobilize Philippine defenses in case of a Japanese attack. The general was given $10 million and 100 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers to ease his task. MacArthur deployed most of his defenses on the northern island of Luzon and southern island of Mindanao, forming what he called the key or base point of the U.S. defense line. General MacArthur anticipated Japanese aggression as early as November 1941, when Japanese aircraft were seen over northern Luzon. In early December, Japanese bomber formations were observed flying within 20 miles of the Lingayen Gulf shoreline and returning to Taiwan. Trial runs in preparation for the attack was the probable consensus among U.S. military leaders. On December 8, 1941, between 2 and 3 a.m. local time, the news reached U.S. forces in the Philippines that Pearl Harbor was under attack. The war with Japan had finally come. General Hisaichi Terauchi, who had previously been Minister of War, was in charge of the Philippines invasion as top commander of the 14th Army. He made his subordinate, Lieutenant General Masahiro Homa, operational commander. By 11 a.m., American aircraft began to land to refuel. MacArthur gave his approval to launch a counterattack. By then it was too late. By 12:30, advanced Japanese invasion forces reached the airfield at Iba on the western coast of Luzon, destroying a flight of P-40 fighters in the process of landing. Soon after, the Del Carmen airfield to the southeast of Iba was also attacked. MacArthur's air power was destroyed. On December 10th, with air superiority achieved, General Homa ordered the invasion to proceed. On December 20th, the Japanese army landed on Mindanao and then Luzon, quickly capturing airfields and other key strategic positions. Consequently, by February 1942, the President ordered MacArthur to leave his command and surviving troops during their last stand on the island of Corregidor. He was told to proceed to Australia, where he would take over a full-strength army to take back the Philippines. FDR used deception to gain MacArthur's full compliance with the order. There was no army waiting in Australia. On March 11th, MacArthur left Corregidor. The unconditional surrender of all American forces came on May 6, 1942, when General John Wainwright capitulated to the absolute demands of General Homa. The Death March was the most tragic consequence of the American defeat in the Philippines. It began on April 9th, a month before the final surrender. The Japanese were unprepared logistically and materially for the sheer number of prisoners that would surrender. Approximately 9,000 American and 60,000 Filipino troops surrendered to the Japanese on the Bataan Peninsula. Most of the prisoners were wounded from months of fighting and sick with tropical diseases, namely dysentery, malaria, and dengue fever. Prisoners were marched north with little or no food, water, or medical treatment in the oppressive tropical heat. Any prisoner who collapsed from exhaustion, fell behind, or broke ranks to drink water, even from a mud hole, were either shot, bayoneted, or beheaded on the spot. It has been estimated that as many as 500 American and 2,500 Filipino prisoners were killed in the march, with many more dying in the subsequent months and years from starvation and disease.
I'll be seeing you in all
Who were these men on the death march? Brothers, sons, husbands? This is Private Bruce Neal Choate, who grew up in Ola, Arkansas, near Little Rock. He was 18 in 1941 and working in Carlsbad, New Mexico, when he joined the National Guard there. Private Choate's unit was sent to the Philippines. As a POW, he survived the death march and years of captivity. His story had a happy ending. He was promoted to corporal, made it all the way back home, still smiling too. The Bataan prisoners were liberated by March 1945. The number of casualties of the Bataan Death March cannot be determined with precision because records are sparse. Thousands died of malnutrition, disease, exhaustion, physical abuse, or execution. More than twice as many American and Allied POWs died in the first 2 months at Camp O'Donnell, one of the internment camps, as those who died on the Death March. Why did the Japanese troops behave so brutally? After the war, some Japanese soldiers claimed that the cruelty, if it occurred at all, was a result of American tactics, which were to establish and hold the line, then fall back while inflicting maximum casualties on the attacking Japanese soldiers. In the end, a better explanation might be Bushido, the code of honor and morals developed by the Japanese samurai, and the Japanese contempt for the cowardly surrender of any enemy. General Hisaichi Terauchi never saw the end of the war. He died of a stroke on May 10, 1945. 4 months later, the commanding general of the invasion of the Philippines, Masahiro Homma, was arrested by the Allies and indicted for war crimes. Homma was charged with 43 counts of crimes against humanity and was found guilty of permitting members of his command to commit, quote, brutal atrocities and other high crimes. The general was sentenced to death by firing squad and was executed on April 3, 1946.